the case, nobody's ever going to know that you need an Eruv, and everyone's going to forget the laws of Eruv. So Gemara says to Ma'arvi, they made an Eruv. Even though the Eruv doesn't help, it doesn't do anything, because they don't even need it, but I guess to show that they don't not be Mavatal Torah Eruv, they made the Eruv. So the Gemara says, why would you allow them to make an Eruv? If you do that, Yoimru Eruv Moel B'Makom Nochri. People will think the halacha is you're allowed to make an Eruv with a non-Jew. So the Gemara answers the Machrizina. We make an announcement that this is not real an Eruv, it's only because of there's a non-Jew here, and so they explained everything. So, Achrasta L'Dardiki? Yeah, but what about future generations? They're going to know, they're going to see people carrying in this Eruv, and they're not going to hear this declaration. They're going to forget the dinim of Torah Eruv. So, Elam Rava changes the whole pshat. Lezel Chad Minai. Let one of you. So again, we have a problem. The non-Jew refuses to rent his place. So what do you do? Lezel Chad Minai. Let one of them go to the non-Jew. Likriv Levelishlo Minei Duchta. He should start becoming friends with the non-Jew, and he will borrow from the non-Jew a place that some of the non-Jews' ownership in the chutzner. He'll ask him if I can place something of the Jews there. So since the Yisrael, in a sense, is dwelling in part of the chutzner of the Nochri, so it's as if the Jew is working for the Nochri, and we're going to see a Sachir and a Lakito Nochri can also sort of give up their rishus to the people in the chutzner, right? Linach bei midi, davalek eschir Lakito. You become like a sharecropper of the non-Jew. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, afil eschir, afil Lakito, noisin eruva v'dayo. That he can, the Sachir who works for the Nochri, if he's a Jew, can participate with the Jews in the Mavli, and that's enough. What if the non-Jew has 5 workers that live in different attics, right? Do all of them have to participate in the Eruv? So the whole thing is for a kula. So we would not require for all 5. One of them would be enough. And the Shulchan Aruch paskins that way. So first of all, he says if you have a Jew, you have a non-Jew doesn't want to rent. One of the people in the chutzner should become friendly with the non-Jew. Unless then he'll give his permission for the Jew who became his friend to put something down in the Gentiles portion of the chutzner. And then it's considered like he's schir of a Lakito. And then he can rent that portion even without telling the non-Jew. And that's the shitas of the Rambam and the Rashba. And other people say you don't have to rent from him. He adds to the Eruv as well, and that's enough. Gufa. So let's learn a little bit in detail. That a worker of the non-Jew can also lay down his Eruv as part of the chutzner, and that takes care of the problem if the non-Jew is unwilling. Rav Nachman, how beautiful is this sugya? Rav Shmuel, Shasa Revius Yayin al Yoeh. If a person drinks Revius wine, he may not paskin a halacha. On Rav Nachman, Lo ma'al yahashmaitza. That that halach I don't like. I know, because like me, if I don't drink at least a revius wine, I don't have a clear mind. I need to drink some wine to clear my mind. My time, how did you say such a thing? The roes zonos ya'abed hon. Somebody who sees ladies of the evening, ya'abed hon will lose his fortune. And we darshan like this: Kol ha'omer shmua zu noeh, v'zu eina noeh. You're not allowed to say on Torah, oh, this is a nice vort and that's not a nice vort. Ma'abed hon shel Torah. So how could Rav Nachman say, oh, that halacha he liked and that halacha he didn't like? He's going against this limud. Amrlei, Hadribi. Okay, I go back on what I said. Amar Rabba Baravuna. Shasui al yispalel. Somebody who drank wine should not daven. However, in ispalel tfilaso tfila. Daven, it's still accepted. Shikor al yispalel. Somebody who's drunk should not daven. In ispalel tfilaso toeva. It's an abomination. Now, what's the gather? Hechidami shasui vechidami shikor. What does it mean? Shasui shikor. See, kihad Rabbi Abba Bar Shulni Rab Nashia Bar Yirmiyah Migifti. Have a komiftri ma'adadi, ama avedinar yufti. When they would depart from each other crossing a bridge, Amru, kol chad minon lema milsad lo yishmi lechavre. Each one of us should say a dvar Torah that the other one has not heard. Why? Because they were leaving each other. And the Amr Mari Bar Avuna, lo yipater odem echavero el mitoch dvar halacha. When you leave your friend, you should always leave with dvar halacha. Shemitoch kach zochro. Through the dvar halacha, you will remember him. What's the most famous case of this, gentlemen? The most famous case of this is Yaakov and Yosef, right? Chazal tell us that when Yosef left Yaakov, they studied Egla Rufa, right? That was the last, because there was and then that's why when Yosef sent back a simon, he sent back agolos, he sent back wagons. Why? To remind his father, oh yeah, the last thing we learned together was Egla Rufa, so it proved to Yaakov that Yosef was still alive. I think that's the most famous case of this concept of lo yipater adam echavero mitoch dvar halacha. So poter chad v'amar hechidami shasui v'echidami shikor. They were studying this halacha. What does it mean that you drank? What does it mean that you're drunk? Shasui kol sheyach l'daber l'fnei hamelech. If you had an audience in front of Queen Elizabeth or President Trump, you could still carry on a conversation. Shikor is kol she'eino yachol l'daber l'fnei hamelech. You can't really carry on a conversation. Now, if a ger, a convert dies, now a ger is kenoila dami. Ger is kikotin shenoila dami. When a non-Jew converts, he has no relatives. So if he dies, his assets become hefker. There's a din, whoever is machzik, b'nichse hager first, acquires those assets. So the Gemara is going to give us some examples of windfalls, that a person becomes wealthy suddenly. So if all of a sudden, what can he do to maintain these assets? Yikach bahen sefer Torah. With the little bit of the money, buy a sefer Torah. With the schar of the mitzvah, all the other assets will be mekuyim. Amr Rav Sheshes, afil baal b'nichse ishto. Another example where somebody all of a sudden becomes wealthy is he marries a wealthy woman who came in with a big nedunya, with a lot of nichse malug, gifts that were given to her by her father. So a Baal, he doesn't own them, but he has kinyan peiros in nichse malug. So he also, with those assets, should do a mitzvah. and that will allow him to retain these assets. Rashi somehow seems to say that it removes ayin hara, that by using some of the assets to acquire a mitzvah, somebody who becomes wealthy suddenly, I guess, is the reason why ayin hara occurs. So this, I guess, is a way to shield the ayin hara. Rava Amar afilu avad iska v'rava. How about this? Somebody did a good business deal and makes a lot of money. So again, you should buy something to preserve it. Rav Papa Amar afilu matzah mitzia. Let's say you found a lost object that's very valuable. Same thing. Amar that by Yitzchak afilu kasav bu tefillin. Even if you write a new pair of tefillin with the money, that you don't have to write a sefer Torah. Even writing a new pair of tefillin will give you the same protection. Yaakov on his way to Esav, on his way to Charan, before he meets Rachel, says, "You know what? I make a neder. And he says, "If Hashem will be imadi." And he will give 1/10 of his assets to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's the proof for this. Rabbi Bar Chama, derech mil v'sheina kol shum mefigin esayayim. If a person is drunk, so you walk a kilometer or a little bit of sleep, and that you can shake off a hangover. That's only if you drank a revius. No, walking will make you more drunk, and sleeping will make you more sleepy. Is walking a kilometer going to remove the effects of wine? Vatanya. Rabbi Gamliel, the father of Rabbi Gamliel, who was Rabbi Gamliel of Yavna, was riding on a donkey. He was traveling from Akko to Gziv. Rabbi Loi was walking behind him. They found loaves of bread on the road. Rabbi Gamliel said, Eloi, pick up the bread. You can't have food on the floor. Then they found a Gentile. Mavgoi, that was his name. Take these breads from Eloi. So nitfalo Rabbi Loi. So Rabbi Loi went to Rabbi Gamliel. Well, what's going on here? Oh, hello, Rabbi Loi. So Rabbi Loi asked the non-Jew, where are you from? I come from the village of all the huts that are over there. What's your name? Mavgoi Shmeini. My name is Mavgoi. So he asked the Gentile, had you ever met Rabbi Gamliel before? No, I never met him before. But also, obviously, how did Rabbi Gamliel know this guy's name? He must have had Ruach HaKodesh. That's what the Gemara says. We learn three important principles from this story. You're not allowed to pass food on the ground and just pass by. It's a bizoyon to the food. You have to pick it up. Now, why did he tell Rabbi Eloi to give the bread to the non-Jew? He was following the concept of rov, that the majority of travelers on this road must have been non-Jews. Therefore, the bread is not pas Yisrael. Therefore, he should not eat it. He gives it to the non-Jews. And this is chometz shover lava Pesach. So chometz that was owned by a Gentile, that is after Pesach, you know what? You're allowed to benefit from it. Because if you give a gift, that's also benefit, because he wants to reciprocate. So if something is osur bano, you're not allowed to give that as a gift. Once they got to Gziv, a Jew came to Rabbi Gamliel, a person had made a neder, and he wanted Rabbi Gamliel to be matir neder. So Rabbi Gamliel said, "Klum shasinu v'yas yana italki." Didn't we drink Italian wine? Amar lohe. So imken yitalach venat yafige nenu. This guy who's asking us to be matu neder should walk after us while we walk, so we clear our heads. V'taylach ven shlosha milin. We walked 3 miles. So you see, this is the kasha. It should say 1 mil, because we said before I have to do is walk 1 mil. Anyways, then they came to a rocky outpost. Kivan Shigil Suma Tzur in Tyre, which right Yorad Rabbi Gamliel Menachamor. Rabbi Gamliel came off the donkey. Vinisatev, he covered himself with a talus for Yarshav. V'hitur lo nidro, and he was matur neder. We learned a lot of halachas from this story. Lamadnu shavias yana talki mashaki, that a revius of Italian wine can make you drunk. V'lamadnu that shikor al yoyim, that someone who's drunk is not allowed to paskin. V'lamadnu shadech mafiga sayai, that walking a certain amount will lessen the effect of wine. V'lamadnu shein mefir nedorim, you're not allowed to be made for neder lo rochul, not riding, v'lo ba'alech, not walking, v'lo oimei, not standing, and lo yoshev. That's the baraisa. Ktani miyas comes, whatever you want to say, shlosha milin. You started off by saying the halacha is derech meals b'figin sayayin. How come Rabbi Gamliel had to walk 3 mil? And for the Gemara, shiny yaina itaki, the meshakir tfei. Yaina, Italian wine is more potent, and therefore you need to walk more. We said that if you drank a more powerful wine, walking only makes things worse. And for the Gemara, rochul shiny, that it takes longer while he was riding for the effect of the wine to go away. Oh, where you came to that terrace. So Rabbi Bar Abanami like kasha. We had a problem before. Rabbi Bar Chama, who made no difference between revius for Yos and revius, is also not a kasha. Rochul shiny. So that means if you're riding, it takes you longer than a meal to get rid of the wine. Versus Aini, it's not so. Barav Nachman, Nefir in the door, Bein Ma'alech, Bein Oimi, Bein Bein Rochul. Who told you can't be made for neder? You can made for neder walking and standing and riding. Versus Tanoim. So Machlok is Tanoim. So the concept of a neder, some say, you have to open up by pointing out to the person who made the neder that he regretted making the neder. If you would have known that such and such would have occurred by you making the neder, would you have made the neder? He said, oh no, that's called psicha b'charata. So one holds that to be matir neder, you need to be poisich b'charata. And there, that requires thinking. You have to come up with a chap, what to say to the person to make him regret. So thinking, you got to get off the horse and sit down. However, there is a mandar that says, no, you can just be matir. There are people who stick themselves with a sword with their mouth, and only chachamim can heal it. Means whoever makes a neder is roy that he should be stuck with a spear. You should not make nedarim, but the lashon of chachamim will heal. So he felt, he was of the opinion that you had to be posech b'charata, and therefore he had to concentrate. That's why he had to sit down. Those who hold that you don't need, so the Shulchan Aruch paskins, after later neder b'charata b'lvad, as long as a person has his own regret, you don't have to open up with regret. He has regret that he made the neder. She's chayt adam aletzam neder shenadar. V'ilu potach drush kasher eno mischayt al neder atzmo ela shekabel al atzmo zadavar begeder neder ויש אומרים שצריך אף אחד למצוא פסח בתם להתיר הנדר, אולי די למחרת לבד. So it's Rashi Rambam versus Tosfos. So it's a major sugya. It's a machlokas whether you can just be matir neder without a Pesach. Rashi and the Rambam hold that you need a Pesach. Shitas Tosfos are more mekel. Amar Mar. Mirz Hashem, in Yoreh Deah, we will, when we get to that sugya, we'll learn a little bit more detail. So we learned that if you see food on the road, you can't just walk by. You got to treat it becovet. That was early generations. Jewish girls didn't know witchcraft. We don't touch the loaf because the Bnei Yisrael have invested the loaf with some kind of kishuv. If we touch the kishuv, voodoo, it's going to cause harm to us. That's straight to Gemara. Tana, shleimin mavirin. In fact, if the loaf is a complete loaf, don't touch that loaf because they're going to do kishuv with it. Petitin ein mavirin. If it's crumbs, you shouldn't let that go by. You should sweep them up because they're not going to do kishuv with that. What? They don't do kishuv with petitin? They do. This is a witch that even on pieces of barley would do kishuv. So the Gemara says the shakli bagrayu. No, they would be paid for the witchcraft, but they wouldn't invest the pieces with witchcraft, but they would be paid. But they would be paid with it, but they do not invest the pieces with witchcraft. Okay.